a homeless orphan girl helped a man in the rubble. She didn't know he was one of the richest men in America. Tell us in the comments which city you're listening from. Click the like button and let's begin the story. Lily was 9 years old when she learned that invisibility was the only superpower that actually existed in the real world. Not the kind from comic books or science fiction movies. The kind that happened when adults looked directly at you on the street and saw nothing. The kind that made you realize you could stand in the middle of a crowded sidewalk and still be completely alone. She had been living on the streets of Seattle for nearly 2 years, ever since the social worker with tired eyes and a clipboard told her there was no family willing to take her in after her mother died in the car accident on Interstate 5. Lily's mother, Rebecca Chin, had been a waitress working double shifts at a diner near Pike Place Market, trying to save enough money to move them out of the cramped studio apartment where mold grew in the corners, and the heating never worked properly during winter. She had been driving home after a 16-hour shift when a truck driver who had been awake for 23 straight hours crossed into her lane. The accident was instant, painless. The police officer had told Lily with that careful voice adults use when they think children can't handle the truth. But Lily knew what painless meant. It meant her mother had died alone on a dark highway while she slept in their apartment, waiting for a good night kiss that would never come. After the funeral, paid for by the diner owner and her mother's co-workers, Lily was placed in the state foster care system. The first home lasted 3 weeks. The family seemed kind at first, but Lily quickly realized they were more interested in the monthly check from the state than in actually caring for a traumatized 7-year-old girl. The second home was worse, much worse. She didn't like to remember the details of those 4 months. The locked basement, the missed meals when she cried too much, the other children in the house who had learned to stop crying years ago. By the time social services finally investigated after a teacher noticed bruises on Lily's arms, she had already decided she would never let another adult have that kind of power over her again. The emergency shelter where they placed her temporarily was overcrowded and chaotic. 43 children crammed into a building designed for 20. Not enough beds, not enough food, not enough supervision. It was there that Lily learned about the disappearances. Older kids would whisper late at night about children who vanished from the shelter. Sometimes they were told the kids had been placed with families. Sometimes there were no explanations at all. Just empty beds in the morning and new faces by evening. One night, Lily overheard 2 staff members talking in hushed voices outside the dormitory. How much this time, one asked. $1,500 per kid. Same as always. The van comes Thursday night. Lily didn't fully understand what she was hearing, but she understood enough. Some of the children weren't being adopted. They were being sold. That Thursday, she left everything behind except a small backpack containing a photograph of her mother, a Swiss Army knife her mom had given her for her 8th birthday, and a blanket with cartoon rabbits that still smelled faintly like their old apartment. She slipped out through a bathroom window during the dinner chaos and never looked back. For the next 2 years, Lily survived using skills she developed through observation and necessity. She learned which restaurants threw away perfectly good food at closing time. She learned which public libraries had bathrooms where she could wash up without being questioned. She learned which neighborhoods had security cameras and which didn't. She slept in places adults never thought to look. Behind dumpsters in industrial areas. Inside abandoned cars in junkyards. In the hidden spaces beneath highway overpasses where the sound of traffic overhead masked everything else. She learned to move like a shadow, to avoid eye contact, to make herself small and forgettable. The invisibility wasn't magic. It was survival. Most people walked past her without seeing her at all. Those who did notice usually looked away quickly, uncomfortable with the reminder that children could fall through society's cracks so completely. There were exceptions. A librarian named Mrs. Patterson who pretended not to notice when Lily spent entire days reading in the warmest corner of the building. A cook at a Chinese restaurant who always left a container of fried rice near the back door on Tuesday nights. A homeless veteran named Robert who taught her which abandoned buildings were safe and which were controlled by dangerous people. But these small kindnesses were scattered moments in long stretches of loneliness and fear. Lily learned not to depend on anyone, learned not to hope for anything beyond making it through each day. She developed routines that kept her alive. Wake before dawn to avoid being seen. Find food. Find water. Find shelter before dark. Stay invisible. Stay safe. Stay moving. The hardest part wasn't the hunger or the cold. It was the constant awareness that she didn't matter to anyone, that she could disappear completely and no one would notice, that her entire existence had become a footnote in a city too busy to care. On October 14th, everything changed. The storm had been building for days. Weather forecasters warned of the worst atmospheric conditions Seattle had seen in decades. Heavy rain, sustained winds exceeding 70 miles per hour, potential structural damage to older buildings. Most people prepared by stocking supplies and staying indoors. Lily prepared by finding the most solid structure she could access, an abandoned parking garage on the edge of the industrial district where she had sheltered during previous storms. But this storm was different. The wind didn't just blow. It screamed through the city like something alive and furious. Rain fell so hard it seemed like the sky was collapsing. Lightning illuminated buildings that swayed visibly in the wind. Lily huddled in a corner of the parking garage, wrapped in her rabbit blanket and a tarp she had found, listening to the apocalyptic sounds outside. Around 3 in the morning, she heard something that made her blood run cold. A massive cracking sound, then a rumble that shook the concrete beneath her, then an enormous crash that seemed to go on forever. Something big had collapsed. When dawn finally came and the storm began to weaken, Lily emerged from the garage to see a transformed landscape. Trees down everywhere, power lines sparking on wet pavement, debris scattered across streets like a giant's discarded toys. And 3 blocks away, where an old office building had stood for decades, there was now just a mountain of rubble. Lily knew she should move away from the destruction. Emergency responders would be arriving soon, and she had learned long ago to avoid any situation that might draw official attention. But something made her walk toward the collapsed building instead. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the same instinct that made people slow down to look at accidents. Maybe it was something else entirely. As she approached the rubble, carefully climbing over broken concrete and twisted metal, she heard something that stopped her completely. A voice, weak, barely audible over the wind and the distant sirens, but definitely human. Help. The word was so quiet, she almost convinced herself she had imagined it. But then she heard it again. Please. Someone. Help. Lily froze. Every survival instinct she had developed over 2 years screamed at her to walk away. Getting involved meant exposure. Exposure meant questions. Questions meant social services. Social services meant being trapped in the system again. But the voice kept calling. She followed the sound, moving carefully across unstable debris until she found the source. A hand, pale, covered in dust and blood, reaching up through a gap between 2 massive concrete slabs. Lily knelt down and looked through the opening. In the darkness below, she could barely make out the shape of a man, trapped from the waist down beneath rubble, his face twisted in pain. "There's someone here," the man whispered, his eyes focusing on her with desperate hope. "Please, I can't move. My legs are crushed. I've been here all night." Lily should have run, should have found an adult, should have called for help and disappeared before anyone could ask her name. Instead, she heard herself say, "I'll help you." She had no idea why she said it, had no idea how a 9-year-old girl with no resources could possibly help a grown man trapped under tons of concrete. But something in his eyes, the same fear she had seen in her own reflection countless times, made it impossible to walk away. "What's your name?" the man asked through gritted teeth. Lily hesitated. She hadn't told anyone her real name in months. "Lily," she finally answered. "Marcus," the man replied. "My name is Marcus, and I think you just saved my life." But neither of them knew that the real story was only beginning. Neither knew that powerful people were already searching for Marcus, not to rescue him, but to make sure he never emerged from those ruins alive. And neither knew that a homeless 9-year-old girl and a man trapped in rubble were about to change each other's lives in ways that would ripple far beyond this moment. Lily stared down at Marcus through the narrow gap in the rubble, her mind racing through possibilities. She had no phone to call for help, no adult she trusted enough to involve, and most critically, she knew that emergency responders were probably overwhelmed across the entire city after the storm. By the time official help arrived at this particular collapsed building, it might be too late. "How bad is it?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Marcus tried to move and immediately gasped in pain. "My legs are pinned. I can't feel my left foot at all. There's something metal pressing against my chest. Makes it hard to breathe." Lily assessed the situation with the practical survival mindset she had developed over 2 years on the streets. The concrete slabs creating the gap were massive, impossible for her to move. But the gap itself was just wide enough for her to potentially squeeze through. "I'm coming down," she announced. "No," Marcus said urgently. "It's not stable. The whole thing could collapse further." "Then we should probably hurry," Lily replied, already lowering herself feet first through the opening. The space below was cramped and dark, lit only by the gray morning light filtering through cracks in the debris. Lily dropped the last few feet and landed in a crouch beside Marcus. Now she could see him more clearly. He was probably in his 40s, dressed in what had once been an expensive suit, now torn and covered in dust. His face was pale from blood loss and pain. A deep gash across his forehead had bled extensively, matting his dark hair. But what struck her most were his eyes. Despite the pain, they were sharp and intelligent, studying her with the same careful assessment she was giving him. "You're just a kid," he said, and there was something in his voice. Not dismissal, but concern. "You shouldn't be here alone." "I'm always alone," Lily replied simply, kneeling beside him to examine his injuries. "And I'm good at fixing things." She had learned basic first aid by watching paramedics, who sometimes set up stations for homeless people in Pioneer Square. She knew how to stop bleeding, how to check for broken bones, how to recognize signs of shock. Marcus was showing several of those signs. His breathing was shallow and rapid. His skin was clammy. He was losing the battle to stay conscious. "Stay awake," Lily commanded, touching his shoulder. "If you fall asleep, you might not wake up." "Trying," Marcus murmured. "Hard to focus. Everything hurts." Lily looked around the debris field. She needed supplies, cloth for bandages, something to use as a tourniquet, water if possible, and most importantly, she needed to figure out how to get Marcus out of here. "I'll be right back," she told him. "Don't die while I'm gone." Despite his pain, Marcus almost smiled. "I'll do my best." Lily squeezed back up through the gap and began systematically searching the rubble for anything useful. She found a torn piece of relatively clean fabric that might have been a curtain, a plastic water bottle that still had liquid inside, and most importantly, a metal pipe that could serve as a lever. She also found something that made her pause, a leather briefcase, partially buried in concrete dust. It had popped open in the collapse, scattering papers across the debris. Lily picked up one of the documents and her eyes widened. It was a contract, and the name at the top made her freeze. Marcus Brennan, CEO, Brennan Industries. Even a street kid recognized that name. Brennan Industries was one of the largest technology companies in the world. Marcus Brennan was routinely listed in magazines as one of the wealthiest men in America. His face appeared on business news channels displayed in electronic store windows. The man trapped in the rubble wasn't just anyone. He was someone extremely important. Someone whose disappearance would be international news. Lily looked back at the gap where Marcus waited. She could leave right now, could tell someone what she found and collect whatever reward might be offered, could use this information to bargain her way into a better situation. Instead, she gathered the supplies and climbed back down. "Found some things," she announced, kneeling beside him again. "This is going to hurt." She used the fabric to create a pressure bandage for his head wound, working with the careful precision of someone who had patched her own injuries many times. Marcus hissed in pain, but didn't pull away. You're very good at this, he observed through gritted teeth. I've had practice, Lily replied, not elaborating. Now drink this. Small sips. She held the water bottle to his lips. Marcus drank gratefully. Lily, he said after a moment, I need to tell you something important. The building collapsed. It wasn't an accident. She paused in her work. What do you mean? There was an explosion. Right before the building came down. Someone tried to kill me. His voice was getting weaker. They might come back to make sure they finish the job. Lily absorbed this information with the calm of someone who had learned that the world was dangerous long ago. Who wants you dead? Don't know for sure, but I have suspicions. Marcus tried to shift position and winced. People I trusted. People who stood to gain everything if I disappeared. Your company? Lily said. It wasn't a question. Marcus's eyes focused on her sharply. You know who I am. Found your briefcase. Saw the papers. And you came back anyway. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Most people would have run to sell that information to the highest bidder. Lily shrugged. I'm not most people. They fell silent for a moment. In the distance, sirens wailed as emergency crews worked on other collapsed structures across the city. But no one was coming to this building. Not yet. We need to get you out of here, Lily said finally. But I can't move these concrete slabs. They're too heavy. I know. Marcus's voice was fading. Maybe when the rescue crews get here. No, Lily said firmly. If someone tried to kill you, they might be watching, waiting to see if you survived. If official rescuers show up, they'll know. And they'll try again. Marcus stared at her. You're 9 years old, and you're thinking like a tactical strategist. I'm 9 years old, and I've stayed alive on the streets for 2 years, Lily corrected. You learn to think ahead, or you die. She stood up and examined the rubble more carefully. The concrete slab pinning Marcus's legs was resting on another piece of debris at an angle. If she could shift that supporting piece, the weight distribution might change enough for Marcus to pull free. It was dangerous. The whole structure could collapse further. But staying here was also dangerous. I have an idea, Lily announced. But you have to trust me. I already do, Marcus replied. And he meant it. Lily used the metal pipe as a lever, wedging it beneath the supporting debris. When I push down on this, you need to pull yourself backward as hard as you can. It'll hurt. A lot. But it's the only way. Marcus nodded, bracing himself. On 3, Lily said. 1, 2, 3. She threw all her weight onto the lever. The debris shifted slightly. Marcus screamed and pulled backward, his hands clawing at the concrete floor, his face contorted in agony. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, with a grinding sound, the concrete slab shifted 6 inches to the side. Marcus pulled free, his legs dragging behind him. Blood soaked through his pants. But he was free. We have to move, Lily said, already moving to support him. Can you stand? I don't think so, but I can crawl. Together, they worked their way toward a section of the building that had partially remained standing, a former storage area where the ceiling was still intact and walls provided cover. Lily helped Marcus settle against a wall, then used more fabric to create makeshift bandages for his legs. You need a hospital, she said, examining the damage. His left leg was clearly broken, possibly in multiple places. The right was badly lacerated, but might be intact. Hospital means questions. Questions mean exposure. Exposure means whoever tried to kill me gets another chance. Lily understood that logic perfectly. It was the same reason she avoided hospitals, police stations, and anywhere else that kept records and asked names. Then what do we do? She asked. Marcus reached into his jacket with trembling hands and pulled out a phone. The screen was cracked, but it still lit up. I need to reach someone I trust. Someone outside the company. Someone they wouldn't expect. He tried several numbers. No service. The cell towers were down across most of the city from storm damage. There's a place I know, Lily said. About 6 blocks from here. Old shipping container yard that nobody uses anymore. I've stayed there before. It's hidden. Safe. We can hide there until you can make contact. 6 blocks. Marcus looked down at his ruined legs. "I don't know if I can make it." "You have to," Lily said simply. "Because if we stay here, you're dead." She was right, and Marcus knew it. He nodded. What followed was one of the most painful journeys of Marcus Brennan's life. Lily found an old door panel that could serve as a makeshift stretcher. She dragged Marcus through back alleys and forgotten passages, using routes she had memorized during 2 years of avoiding attention. They moved in short bursts, hiding whenever they heard voices or vehicles. Lily's small size and knowledge of hidden paths made her the perfect guide for this desperate flight. It took 3 hours to cover 6 blocks. By the time they reached the abandoned shipping container yard, Marcus was barely conscious from pain and blood loss. Lily had prepared this particular container months ago as a backup shelter. Inside, it was surprisingly livable. Cardboard for insulation, a camping lantern she had found in a dumpster, bottles of water, canned food, a first aid kit she had gradually assembled by stealing single items from different stores. She settled Marcus inside and used the first aid supplies to clean and bandage his injuries properly. His left leg was definitely broken. He was showing signs of infection, and he had likely lost more blood than was safe. But he was alive, and for the next 3 days, Lily kept him that way. She stole antibiotics from a pharmacy, dosing Marcus carefully based on instructions she read on packages. She found clean water. She changed his bandages. She kept him hidden when people occasionally passed near the container yard. During those 3 days, Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes delirious with fever. In his lucid moments, he talked to Lily, asked her about her life, listened to her story, and slowly began to understand exactly who had saved him. In his delirious moments, he revealed things he didn't mean to share. Names, dates, details about his company, and most importantly, the conspiracy he had been investigating just before the building collapsed. Lily listened to everything, remembered everything, and began to piece together a picture that was far more disturbing than she had imagined. Marcus Brennan hadn't just been targeted by random criminals. He had been betrayed by people at the highest levels of his own company, people who had decided he was more valuable dead than alive. On the morning of the 3rd day, Marcus finally woke with clear eyes and a stronger voice. "Lily," he said, "I need to tell you something important." She looked up from the book she had been reading by lantern light. "If we get out of this," Marcus continued, "I'm going to make you a promise. I'm going to change your life, give you everything you never had. Family, home, education, protection, everything." Lily studied him carefully. "Why?" "Because you saved my life when you had every reason not to. Because you're smarter and braver than most adults I know. And because I've spent 20 years building an empire while ignoring the fact that children like you exist." His voice cracked slightly. "I can't change what happened to you, but I can change what happens next." "Promises are easy," Lily said quietly, "especially when people think they might die." "You're right," Marcus acknowledged. "So let me be more specific. I have a friend, James Caldwell. We went to law school together before I went into tech. He's one of the few people I trust completely. If I can reach him, he can help us. And he'll make sure my promises become legal reality. And if we can't reach him, then we'll find another way." Marcus met her eyes. "I don't break my promises, Lily. Not to people who saved my life. Not to children who deserve better than what the world has given them." For the first time in 2 years, Lily allowed herself to feel something dangerous. Hope. "Okay," she said. "Then let's figure out how to keep you alive long enough to keep those promises." What neither of them knew was that the people who had tried to kill Marcus were getting desperate. That morning, 3 men in dark suits had visited every hospital in Seattle, searching for any John Doe admissions matching Marcus's description. When they found nothing, they began expanding their search to homeless encampments, abandoned buildings, and industrial areas. They were getting closer, and time was running out. On the 4th morning in the shipping container, Lily woke to find Marcus sitting up for the first time, his face still pale, but his eyes alert and focused. "We need to move today," he said. My phone finally got enough signal to send a message. James is coming. Where? There's a marina about 2 miles from here. James keeps a boat there. He'll meet us this afternoon. 2 miles might as well have been 20 given Marcus's condition. But Lily had learned that impossible just meant difficult. And difficult meant you had to be creative. She left Marcus hidden in the container and spent the morning scavenging. She returned with a shopping cart she had found abandoned in an alley, reinforced with cardboard and blankets, to create a makeshift wheelchair. "You can't be serious," Marcus said when he saw it. "You have a better idea?" He didn't. They left the container yard at noon, when the industrial area was at its quietest. Lily pushed the cart through back routes she had mapped over 2 years, avoiding main streets and security cameras. Several times, they had to hide when people passed. Each time, Lily's knowledge of invisible spaces saved them. Behind dumpsters, inside abandoned doorways, beneath loading docks. They were 3 blocks from the marina when Lily saw something that made her freeze. A black SUV parked at an intersection ahead. 2 men in suits standing beside it, scanning the area with professional precision. "Get down," Lily whispered urgently, pulling the cart into an alley. But she was too late. One of the men had seen them. His hand moved toward his jacket. "Run," Marcus said. "Leave me. Save yourself." Instead, Lily did something she had never done before. She started screaming, "Help! Someone help! My dad is hurt. Please, someone call 911. Her voice echoed through the industrial district. Windows opened. People emerged from buildings. Suddenly, instead of being invisible, Lily and Marcus were the center of attention. The men in suits froze. They couldn't act with witnesses, couldn't approach without exposing themselves. They retreated to their vehicle and drove away, but Lily knew they would circle back. An older woman approached cautiously. "What happened, honey?" "Car accident," Lily lied smoothly. "Please, he needs to get to the harbor. Our friend is meeting us there. Please help us." Something in Lily's desperate sincerity moved the woman. "I have a truck around the corner. Come on." 10 minutes later, they arrived at the marina. The woman helped them to the docks, made sure they were safe, and left only after Lily assured her their friend was on his way. They waited beneath the dock, hidden by shadows and boat hulls, for 20 agonizing minutes. Then Lily heard footsteps on the wooden planks above. "Marcus, are you here?" It was a man's voice, calm, controlled, but with an undercurrent of urgent concern. "James," Marcus called out weakly. "Down here." James Caldwell was a tall man in his early 40s with graying hair and the careful posture of someone used to courtrooms. When he saw Marcus's condition, his professional composure cracked. "My God, what happened?" "Long story," Marcus said. "James, this is Lily. She saved my life. Multiple times." James looked at the small 9-year-old girl standing protectively beside one of the wealthiest men in America, and his expression shifted to something like awe. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything." "We need to leave," Lily said. "Men are looking for him. Bad men." James didn't waste time with questions. He helped Marcus onto his boat, a modest yacht named Second Chance. Lily followed, her eyes wide as she stepped onto something more luxurious than anything she had ever experienced. As the boat pulled away from the dock, Lily saw the black SUV arrive at the marina parking lot. The men inside were too late. James piloted the boat to a private dock on the opposite side of the Sound, where a medical team he trusted was waiting. As paramedics carefully moved Marcus onto a stretcher, he grabbed Lily's hand. "Stay," he said. "Please. Don't run. Trust me." Every instinct told Lily to disappear now, before she got pulled into something beyond her control. But she looked at Marcus's eyes and saw the same desperate hope she had felt when she first heard his voice in the rubble. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." What followed were the strangest 72 hours of Lily's life. She was taken to James Caldwell's home, a secure waterfront property with guards, cameras, and multiple layers of protection. A doctor examined her, gently documenting years of untreated injuries and malnutrition. A social worker interviewed her, carefully and patiently, never pushing when Lily shut down, and Marcus, recovering in a private medical suite in the house, began the process of unraveling the conspiracy that had nearly killed him. With James's help and the evidence Marcus had gathered before the attack, they identified the conspirators. 3 members of Brennan Industries' board of directors, 2 senior executives, and 1 outside private equity firm that had been systematically planning a hostile takeover. The plan had been elegant in its cruelty. Assassinate Marcus during the storm when his death could be blamed on natural disaster. Install a puppet CEO, restructure the company, and walk away with billions. They hadn't counted on Marcus surviving, and they definitely hadn't counted on a 9-year-old homeless girl with the survival skills to keep him alive. James worked with federal prosecutors to build an airtight case. Within a week, arrests were made. Within 2 weeks, the conspiracy was national news. But the media circus barely touched Lily. James made sure of that, using every legal tool available to protect her identity and keep her out of the spotlight. During those weeks, while Marcus recovered and lawyers worked, Lily stayed in the guest room of James's house. She had her own bed, her own bathroom, more food than she could eat. It should have felt like paradise. Instead, it felt like a holding cell. Like any moment, someone would realize there had been a mistake and send her back to the streets or worse. Marcus sensed her fear. On the day he was finally strong enough to walk with crutches, he came to her room. "We need to talk about your future," he said, settling carefully into a chair. Lily had been expecting this, the moment when adults decided what to do with her. She braced herself. "James and I have discussed this extensively," Marcus continued, "and we've consulted with child welfare experts, psychologists, and legal specialists. They all agree that you need stability, structure, and most importantly, choice." He paused. "I want to adopt you, Lily. I want to be your father, not just on paper, but in every way that matters. But this only happens if you want it to." Lily stared at him. "Why?" "Because you saved my life. Because you're extraordinary. Because I've spent 20 years focused on business, and I forgot what actually matters." Marcus's voice was steady, but mostly because in 3 days hiding in that container, I got to know you, the real you. And I realized you're exactly the kind of person I'd be proud to call my daughter. "I don't know how to be someone's daughter," Lily said quietly. "I barely remember what that was like. Then we'll figure it out together. Both of us learning. Both of us trying." Marcus leaned forward. "But I promise you this. You will never be invisible again. You will never be hungry again. You will never be afraid that no one cares if you live or die. Because I will care. Every single day. For the rest of my life." Lily felt something break inside her chest. The wall she had built around her heart over 2 years on the streets. The certainty that she would always be alone. "What if I'm too broken?" she whispered. "What if I can't be the daughter you want?" "Then you'll be exactly the daughter you are," Marcus replied. "And that will be more than enough." For the first time since her mother died, Lily cried. Not the silent tears she had shed in dark alleys, but deep, wrenching sobs that emptied years of loneliness and fear. Marcus moved to sit beside her, wrapping his arms around her in a hug she hadn't realized she desperately needed. "You're safe now," he murmured. "I promise. You're safe." The adoption process took 3 months. Marcus used every resource available to expedite proceedings, working with James to navigate the complex legal system. During those months, Lily began the slow process of learning to trust again. She met with a trauma therapist 3 times a week, a patient woman named Dr. Sarah Kim who never pushed, never judged, and slowly helped Lily understand that she wasn't broken, just wounded. And wounds could heal. She started school for the first time in 2 years, enrolled in a small private academy where teachers understood that brilliant minds sometimes came in packages shaped by trauma. She struggled at first, not academically but socially. She didn't know how to relate to children who had never wondered where their next meal would come from. But gradually, she found her place, found friends who accepted her quietness and her occasional need to just disappear into a book, found teachers who recognized her extraordinary intelligence and her even more extraordinary resilience. And she began to trust Marcus, to believe that his promises weren't temporary, that the home he had created for her wasn't going to vanish. Marcus, for his part, threw himself into fatherhood with the same intensity he had once devoted to building his company. He learned to braid hair by watching YouTube tutorials. He read books on parenting traumatized children. He showed up to every school event, every therapy appointment, every moment Lily needed him. He also fundamentally restructured his priorities. Brennan Industries would continue, now with new leadership he actually trusted. But Marcus stepped back from day-to-day operations to focus on something more important. 6 months after the adoption was finalized, Marcus and Lily stood together at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. The building in front of them was beautiful, modern but warm, secure but welcoming. It was the first permanent facility of Lily's Light Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping homeless and at-risk children. The foundation provided emergency shelter, long-term housing, medical care, education, job training, and most importantly, a guarantee that every child would be seen, heard, and valued. "Would you like to say something?" Marcus asked Lily quietly as reporters gathered. Lily, now 10 years old and wearing a dress she had picked out herself, stepped up to the microphone. "2 years ago, I was invisible," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I lived on the streets and nobody saw me. Nobody cared if I lived or died. I thought that was just how the world worked, that some people mattered and some people didn't." She paused. "But I was wrong. Everyone matters. Every child deserves to be seen. And this building exists to make sure that never again will a child in this city have to feel invisible." The crowd erupted in applause. But Lily wasn't looking at them. She was looking at Marcus, who stood to the side with tears streaming down his face. After the ceremony, a reporter approached them. "Mr. Brennan, is it true that your daughter was homeless when she saved your life?" "Yes," Marcus replied. "And that fact should shame every adult in this city, myself included. We built a society where children can fall through the cracks and become invisible. Lily didn't just save my life. She opened my eyes to a crisis I had ignored for decades." What would you say to people who think one foundation can't solve the homeless crisis? Lily answered before Marcus could. "We're not trying to solve everything. We're trying to help one child at a time. Because every child deserves someone who sees them, who believes in them, who gives them a chance." Over the following years, Lily's Light Foundation expanded across the country. 50 facilities in 30 states. Thousands of children helped. Hundreds adopted into loving families. Countless lives changed. But the work that mattered most to Lily was the direct contact. She visited every facility regularly, talked to the children, shared her story, let them know that she understood, because she had been there too. On her 13th birthday, Lily stood in Marcus's study, looking at the photograph of the two of them taken on her adoption day. Both of them smiling. Both of them knowing they had saved each other. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked him. "Taking in a broken street kid instead of just writing a check?" Marcus looked up from the foundation report he was reviewing. "Do you know what I regret?" "What?" "That I didn't find you sooner. That you had to suffer for even one day. That there are still children out there I haven't reached yet." He stood and crossed her. "But regret adopting you? Never. Not for 1 second. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." Lily hugged him tightly. "You gave me everything." "No," Marcus corrected gently. "We gave each other everything. You gave me purpose, perspective, a reminder of what actually matters. I gave you safety and opportunity, but the strength, the brilliance, the compassion that was always yours." That night, Lily wrote in the journal Dr. Kim had encouraged her to keep. 3 years ago, I was a homeless orphan who thought the world had forgotten me. I slept in abandoned buildings and ate from trash cans. I believed I was invisible. Then I heard a voice calling for help from the rubble, and I made a choice that changed everything. I didn't save Marcus because I expected anything in return. I saved him because even when I felt worthless, I couldn't walk past someone suffering. What I've learned is that compassion isn't about having resources. It's about recognizing shared humanity, about seeing someone else's pain and choosing to care, even when it costs you something. Marcus gave me a family, a home, a future. But more than that, he gave me proof that I was wrong about being invisible, that I mattered, that my life had value. Now I spend my days trying to give that same proof to other children who feel invisible, trying to be the person I needed when I was 9 years old and alone. I learned that you don't need to be rich or powerful to change someone's life. You just need to choose compassion when you could choose indifference. And I learned that families aren't just about blood. They're about people who see you, value you, and choose to love you every single day. I was the homeless orphan who helped a man in the rubble. I didn't know he was one of the richest men in America, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that he was human, and he needed help. That's the lesson I carry with me every day. Everyone deserves to be seen. Everyone deserves compassion. And sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change everything. 5 years after that storm, Marcus stood at another podium, this time at the White House, receiving a Presidential Medal of Freedom for his work on childhood homelessness. In his acceptance speech, he said something that would be quoted for years to come. People call me a hero for creating a foundation that helps homeless children. But the real hero is my daughter, who showed me what heroism actually looks like. She had nothing. I had everything. But when she found me dying in the rubble, she didn't calculate what she could gain. She just helped. That's heroism. Everything else is just having the resources to amplify compassion that already exists. Lily, now 14 and sitting in the front row, smiled. She was no longer the invisible child sleeping in shipping containers. But she had never forgotten what that felt like. And she never would, because that memory was what drove her every single day to make sure no child ever had to feel that way again. The homeless orphan and the billionaire. The invisible girl and one of the most powerful men in the world. Two people who should never have met, whose lives should never have intersected. But on one October morning in the ruins of a collapsed building, their paths crossed. And both of them were saved, not just from death, but from lives half-lived, from forgetting what actually mattered, from the danger of becoming so focused on survival or success that they forgot about connection, compassion, and the simple truth that every human being deserves to be seen. Years later, when reporters asked Lily what she wanted her legacy to be, she always gave the same answer. I want every child who feels invisible to know they matter, to know that their life has value, to know that somewhere someone sees them. And I want every adult with resources to understand that compassion isn't charity. It's recognizing that we're all connected, that helping someone else isn't selfless. It's the most selfish thing you can do, because it makes your own life infinitely richer. The story of a homeless girl and a man in the rubble became more than just a survival tale. It became a reminder that extraordinary transformations can begin with the simplest choice, to help someone who needs it, regardless of what you might gain. And that sometimes the people we save end up saving us right back.